I know that, what time's our hard stop time? We're 45 minutes, or do we have an hour?
Is it 10:30?
Yeah, we need walking time, I assume.
You can go all the way till 10:30.
Great, perfect, okay. Well, you let me know when you guys are ready.
I'm just checking in the other room just to make sure everyone here.
Michael, can you?
Yeah, hello, my name is Michael. I once could recite the entire Gettysburg Address. I'll just get started. 7 years ago. We good?
Yep. Not a bad mic test skill to have.
No, it was so useful. And it solidified for everyone the nerdom that I am. Which is good. That's a great entry point. Are we clear? Are we good?
I believe so.
Okay. Well, I'm going to get started, and we'll pull people along. So, welcome. I'm glad that you are here. We're the first workshop of the day, so welcome to everyone who is here physically, and to those of you who are joining us via the webinar. For the webinar-specific people, we would love to have this be as dynamic as possible, and so the way in which we're trying to do that is through the chat. Zoom has chat built into it, so you will find that icon. We think it's on the top left, but it maybe if you're on an iPad or on a mobile device, it may be in a different place. Look for the word chat. Bring that up. Make sure that you're chatting to not just the panelists, but everyone, so that we can all be involved in the conversation. If you have questions or if you have feedback, and you put that in the chat, we have people in physical presence here who will alert me and will add your voice into the room here. So we're glad that you're joining us remotely, glad that you are here physically, and we will get going. I will just start by saying, if you want the slides are going to be available in the big collection depot later. But if you want access to the slides right now, because that helps you, or you want to take notes over them, or you just want the slides, you'll find them at that link. So feel free to go there, and you will have access to that. For those of you who may be looking that up, I will just say I'm grateful to be here. This is my second eFormation. And I told my congregation, I'm Presbyterian, and so I report to a session. That's what we call the leaders of our congregation. And I was reporting to them as I was coming out here that I found eFormation, and it was like finding my people. They're the people who are interested in the church, but are interested in being faithful in the world of technology. So in my own selfish perspective, this is a homecoming to my people. Okay, well, let's get this thing running. So who is this guy? My name is Michael Gewecke. I'm a dad. These are two girls wearing their penguin pajamas. My wife, Rochelle. I'm a pastor by day. So this was a mission trip that we took. I'm a pastor for youth and families. And we've historically done partnerships with churches in New York City, and this was a trip together with Madison Avenue Presbyterian Church to West Lafayette, or Indiana, sorry. Purdue, yes. Yep. And then by night, I'm the co-founder of the Smart Church Project. And the guy with the beard, that handsome debonair fellow, his name is Brian Miller. He's my partner, best friend. We met at seminary. And together we founded the Smart Church Project. And that company utilizes social media. We do websites, we do technology and communication consulting. Mostly with churches and nonprofits to help them impact their world and to accomplish their mission. Our team plans and executes social media campaigns all the time. This is something that our team just does as part of our daily routine. So it was really great experience for me to take a step back and to ask some of the higher level questions. I was grateful to be able to do that. This is where I live. We left and it was warmer, but a week ago it was like -20. So it gets cold. And in our county, there's more pigs than there are people.
And probably way more corn than there are pigs.
This is true. Interesting factoid, we just grew popcorn this year. It was the best thing that I've ever had. So anyways, so that being said, and by we, I mean my wife's father, and I helped. I did. That was all I did. Okay, anyways, moving on. So do I know when Facebook makes another acquisition? Yes, I do, because I'm a nerd and I read that stuff because I think it's interesting about how technology is advancing. Do I personally tweet? I tried. I'm just going to own that. I really tried. In fact, I've tried multiple times. Like I last year, some people's goals are I'm going to work out more. My goal was I'm going to tweet, and it went the way of most New Year's resolutions. So. The first myth is Michael Gewecke is a social media cynic. And the occasional post may make that seem true. If you follow me on social media or you peruse my RSS feed, you might come to the initial impression that I'm a social media cynic. But seriously, I do post infrequently, and I'm very interested in the sociological aspects and implications for this changing media. And the reason I am is because I'm a firm believer that they are capable of changing and reshaping our imaginations, that it is capable of shaping who we are as people. And so as it reshapes our sense of identity, it also will reshape our communities, and people who are serious about engagement in community and that being founded in something outside of ourselves, it seems to me something that we should be seriously considering. So if it's even true that social media has this capability, then I consider my distance from it an opportunity for critical reflection and not simply cynical detachment. You get the distinction I want to generously make for myself. So today I want to share with you some of the myths from my perspective. There are people here who have a different perspective, and we absolutely need that in the church. But as someone who has just some lingering, yeah, I think we should think about that, these are some of the myths from that vantage point, if that makes sense. So, oh, I should share, I put this up. Eric did this really wonderful photography project where he photographed people with their devices and then photoshopped them out. There's pictures of families at their dinner table where the children are playing and the parents are staring into their hands. If you go there, it's an engaging artistic demonstration of how technology is capable of reshaping our imaginations and our communities. Okay, moving on. So maybe I'm just a critic. My hope is that by the time we leave here today, that you will find encouragement, and maybe if I did my job right, a little inspiration to use these tools to accomplish your mission. And I just want to admit from the outset, it's likely I'm going to disappoint everyone today. Okay? And I just want to own where I'm going to disappoint you. If you came to get some really concrete tools, they're going to be sprinkled throughout. But it's not going to be a fire hose of tools. So I apologize for that. I also want to name that if you came into this place wanting to leave with a step-by-step, easy button, these were the myths, but Michael has the answers, I'm also going to disappoint you today. My hope is that you walk out of here feeling like you know what practices, or what I'm going to call habitude, you should have in your own ministry work. Whether you are a communication director, and this is the thing you do all the time, or you are a person who's here thinking, I need to learn how to do this because I'm serving in a community or an organization, and I need to bring this to bear. All right, so myth number 2. I just need to post more often in more places. There's someone in this room, or there's someone who's joining us online, who's just recently been asked to do this media thing. You're like a greenhorn. You're like, I have passion, and I'm excited, and I have a Facebook account, and my job is now to do this thing. And that person probably just heard recently, to optimize Twitter, you should tweet 8 times a day. Right? Now you know why cat memes are a thing. Because it is hard to tweet 8 times a day. And I'm not even talking about like deep, meaningful, theological things. I'm thinking like, what's the 8th one? What's going in the buffer queue? Because I don't know what's next. So just the volume of content can be difficult. And the reality is that more content does not necessarily equal more results. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about why that is from a platform perspective. But we need to, as people who cherish the value of the proclamation, in whatever context that is for you, we should recognize that what we say and how we say it matters, and that we should strive to say it well, even if that means we say less. Because, by the way, listening is an important practice of social media. All right. So one of my day jobs, like I said, as pastor at First Presbyterian Church in Spirit Lake, is I take youth on trips. And we have what is a designated nature area. It's one of the largest wilderness areas in the continental United States, called the Boundary Waters Wilderness Area. And it's an incredible place. It's as close to being untouched by humans as possible. You get in a canoe and you paddle and you paddle and you paddle, and there's no engines and there's no cell phones. There's an absolute, it's wilderness. And so we took youth and we went into the Boundary Waters. What you have to know about northern Minnesota is it was carved out by glaciers, and so it's jagged, is what you might say. Water is there because it got carved out, right? And it got carved out in irregular patterns. So the lakes are, there's absolutely no logical ordering to the lakes at all. And you have to factor that you have hundreds of years, depending on when the fires were, you have hundreds of years of history in these trees. And one of the things that you learn very quickly when you're canoeing the Boundary Waters is not only are the lakes connected in weird ways, but you often don't know where one lake begins and the other lake ends, because the tree lines hide it. So you have to look to the horizon to see where do the trees dip, because that's where we should be going. Here's the thing about paddling in the Boundary Waters. We had people in our crew who are the athletes. You can tell, maybe, even you online, wasn't in their number. Those are the people who get their paddle and they attack the water. We're gonna kill this thing and we're gonna go, 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 go. But here's the thing about the Boundary Waters. Paddling faster does not necessarily mean you get to your destination quicker. Because what matters is that you are going in the right direction. If you have to go in many different circuitous paths, you should know where you are. A compass is helpful. A map is absolutely necessary. So, in the great words of Yogi Berra, we're lost, but we're making great time. We're making really, really good time. So today I can't give you rote instructions. I can't give you a blueprint for a perfect social media presence, because it has to reflect the nature of your context and community. But what we can talk about today is building a habit of intentionality. And so these are the steps I want to go through with you today. This is the habit of intentionality I want to offer to you as a way forward. And it starts with these questions, which is connected to these purposes. Why? Who? How? And what? And if you're going to be looking to either implement or grow or tweak this in your own context, this is the process that I would take you through. These are the questions I would ask, and these are the outcomes that we would be pushing towards. And they'll be paired, as you'll see, with these myths this morning. All right, so we start with why, and that is going to speak to purpose. Okay, so for your church to be successful in the 21st century, you need, underscore bold, need to be on social media. Maybe, depending on what you mean by need, right? Depending on what you mean by be on, right? So I want to complexify this a little bit because there are very different kinds of social media presences. I want to just name this. There are some churches in my region, Northwest Iowa, where if you have a Facebook page and you post pictures of the kids at the end of the Christmas pageant, you won. Big time. Big time. Because people in the community get to see those pictures, because by the way, your community is small enough, they're going to see those pictures. The fact that those kids can see that someone cared enough to comment on it and say, this looks awesome, I'm glad that they told the story, that is a win in that context, and we need to celebrate it, right? There wasn't any strategy in it. You took pictures, you uploaded it to Facebook. That's like now social media 101, right? But that is a viable plan. That is being on social media. And if that is the purpose that fits your context, we celebrate it and we say that's a win, right? There's other congregations, and in fact, yesterday we had some amazing presentations of people who like social media is the medium of their ministry, right? That doesn't even get close to starting what they need to be capable of doing, right? They're going to have a completely different metric of what needs to be on social media. And so we need to be aware of it. Yes?
With the kid thing and the Christmas pictures, and this is assuming that as a congregation you've had the discussion that we're on social media and it's okay with you if you put your kids on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think those kinds of sensitive discussions as a pre-production,
Yep.
you know, absolute must-do
Yep.
are the ones that are getting skipped over. And then people, especially when it involves their kids, I mean, it's, okay, where's no harm, no foul, right? It's because of the Christmas pageant, you know, and everybody, their kids were in the pageant. So the assumption, there's this huge assumption, but I think some of those difficult discussions are really critical to this work.
Yeah, no, there's no question. What matters here, and I can't reiterate enough, is this needs to be native to your community. Now, native does not always mean easy. Doesn't mean that you're not having difficult conversations. Doesn't mean that you're starting something that makes that you don't start something that makes people uncomfortable.
Or even communicating at all. A lot of things, the discussion happens after the fact.
Yeah, yeah.
And then it's very difficult and unproductive.
Yeah. Yeah, that's helpful. That's helpful. So I would, in my first genre, I would speak to those. We have an album on Facebook. Another genre are congregations or ministries or nonprofits, whatever your context, who are seeking to create and to run sustainable social media presences with specific purposes in mind. And I cannot emphasize to you enough the difference between those strategies. There's a way of being on social media that means being present, and there's a way that tries to affect an outcome. And being intentional about that matters. Social media is great, it's fun, it's energetic, it's like having kids until that third month when you've just not slept for 3 months straight, and then one day you wake up and all you want is a break from that relentless cycle of posting and commenting and posting the next thing and not knowing what the blowback is going to be. Sometimes running that systemic plan is tiring. He spoke well to that yesterday. But my reading of the Old Testament is that oftentimes the predictions that most excite us are the least accurate. In other words, social media is exciting, it's changing at a lightning pace, it's undoubtedly changing our world, but yet we would do well both personally as practitioners and congregations on a larger systemic level to maintain a little bit of distance, intentional distance, prophetic distance. And I put this in the analogy of preaching. I think the best preachers are preaching to the us, to the congregation. But they're doing that from the vantage point outside of the congregation. Right? To be able to have a voice for us, we need to have a little bit of distance to be able to call out where we need called out. Are you with me? And social media, trending on Twitter is awesome. That's great. Maybe there's times that we shouldn't be trending. That maybe we should be saying something in our community, and that's enough. Are you with me? This is all about purpose. Let's keep moving on here. So I think we should pause and reflect. Chamath is the former vice president of Facebook engagement, and he recounts having tremendous guilt for his time at Facebook, where he says, I think we've created tools that are ripping apart the social fabric of how society works. Ooh. As people who have something to say about community, we just pause, I think. We just reflect. It's an admission that should drive us to prayer and to discernment. And if this doesn't, I don't know what will. And so let's put this in context. Let's put this, this continued commitment to this idea of purpose in context. Let's remember how we got here. We have a long history of human communications, right? And this is my very rudimentary sort of depiction. We start with pictograms, and we go all the way through paper. We hit the printing press, and you know, the Reformation. We know so much of that was connected to that technology. We have the telephone. You can put the computer on there. That's great. You see blue? It's there. That's Facebook. Right? The thing that some of us literally cannot go an hour without checking hasn't even hit 20 years old yet. We need to be reminded that this platform is in its infancy. I'm going to talk to you later about its maturation, which is a funny thing in light of this slide I'm showing you right now. It's a baby, and we have no clue what impact it's having in a larger sociological and theological sense. My contention. I have, yes.
Well, and what's not there, superimposed, is all the venues and the engagement. So that's supposed to be an experience. The technology is the delivery.
It's the medium, right?
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. So let's we keep plowing through. So I want to explicitly put this to you. What is your purpose? Okay? If you're a congregation, are we hoping to have more people in the pews? Butts in seats. Okay? Is your goal to have more food delivered to the food pantry? That's a viable goal. I wish more clients came to me and asked, I want more food delivered to our local food pantry. That's a goal. Do you need more donations? Do you need to make it easier for people to give to your congregation or your ministry? Do you need more people involved in Christian education? Is that virtual or is that physical? Right? What is your purpose? We must start with the thing that we're good at. And remember what we're good at. That's the theological question. It's the who are we? Who have we been created and called to be? And how can we as people of God do that well? And if we start with what we're good at, then we can build upon that bedrock the implementation towards the purpose of our social media. And so remember, success is by definition contextual because it needs to be connected to your purpose. Remember, formulas always result in formulaic results. Every time. So if I deliver you a formula, it will look like me and sound like me, and it will not accomplish the ministry in your place and with your people. All right, quick pro tip. I grew up a Pentecostal, now in a Presbyterian church. Another conversation how that happened. Revivalism was a part of my faith experience. And what revivalism has taught me is that we must rely, as people of faith, on that hope that God is alive and at work by the power of the Spirit. And here we need to have a dogged insistence that we stay connected to our theological roots, to that conviction that God is with us. And if we are careful to do that, I think revivalism, that belief that God is at work, that the Spirit is here, at its best, it helps us in social media. So revivalism is all about authenticity. It calls out, it's a moment and a time and a place that calls out the assumptions that we've made, mostly falsely. The stories that we start telling about ourselves that aren't true. And if we allow that to inform our social media presence, we will be authentic, which, by the way, is one of the key markers of viral media. We keep going. Drama. And drama isn't like soap opera drama. It's like being human, right? The drama of life, the reality that we situate ourselves in a time and place, in a story far outside of ourselves. And our social media is much improved as a church witness when we include ourselves in the drama that surrounds us. That doesn't need to be political, but it might be, right? It doesn't need to be personal and named, but it might be. But that is your community and your context that will determine that. And then finally, timeliness, right? Revivalism is all about what is happening right now in this moment, right? And part of the problem of churches trying to take up social media is we try to take our timeless, or what we think of as timeless at least, even if we think of it wrongly, we try to take this timeless content and jam it into what used to be 140 characters, right? Wrong-headed, and by the way, painful. What we instead need to do is do the much more difficult task, and especially for people who are in the pastoral vocation, we need to think of ourselves as being present. I hate being present. I would much rather build a program for tomorrow or evaluate a program yesterday than be present. It's hard. If we can be present, then we are building into our lived lives that thing that on our social media is also important. All right, we keep moving. Who, right? We start with purpose and we move to context. Myth number 4, more, fill in the blank, is better. More is better. The more ducklings you have following, the better. Yeah, not necessarily. Success needs to be measured by outcome, not by abstract quantitative numbers. So, I want to talk to you a little bit about game theory. You know that social media uses quantifiable numbers, likes, loves, retweets, followers, friends, on purpose to drive you to the platform's intended outcome, which is engagement, right? There's a reason why under each post on Facebook, it shows you as many numbers as possible. That's a design choice. Because it turns out that humans respond to quantitative numbers. Now let's make this really human. Everybody knows 50 likes is better than 4. Right? Everybody knows that more loves is better than less. Going back to Chamath, he says, social media exploits a vulnerability in human psychology. So this is how social media networks work. User engagement equals advertising plus monetizable user data, which equals profit. And there is no question that their model is profitable. But the question that we need to ask, I return back to that idea of prophetic distance, a critic, not cynic, is that healthy? And as people who are using a medium that, by the way, I would argue is not value neutral, what should our role as leaders in it be? Not going to answer that. I'm going to ask it. Former design ethicist at Google. I wish I could get that job. Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. And not. Tristan Harris has started an organization called Time Well Spent, which is bringing these questions into the mainstream. But here's the thing. I just mentioned that you should, if you've not heard of this, go there and check that out. It's engaging. Churches and nonprofits make the false assumption that because it works for Twitter and Facebook and lots of corporations that use it well, it will also work for us. I want to trouble that. We assume that user engagement equals donations or butts and seats. And that formula does not stand, statistically. Potentially, okay? It can work. And I want to encourage and inspire you to do what you need to pursue your outcome that you're looking for. But the idea that we can break out in front of, that we can get our content in front of our stakeholders, that it connects with them, and then we're going to convert that into our end purposes is incredibly difficult. It's effort and sustained energy, which I'm just going to name to you as a person who does this professionally and as a pastor. There are times we should just admit we don't have the bandwidth to do it. And pastors or volunteers have some grace in that. Maybe it's not 8 tweets. That's okay. Okay. So it doesn't matter how many followers you have, but it does matter who they are. Remember that we could be seeking those people who are in worship every Sunday. That's a viable goal, by the way. I just want the people in worship because we're going to work on formation. We're going to work on depth. We're going to work on figuring out how to talk to each other because coffee hour is awkward. That's a goal. That's a great goal. Your goal could be, we got that. We're looking for people outside these walls. By the way, you're going to do that entirely differently. Completely different strategy. Know your purpose. Know who you want in your community. Do not let the number of followers matter to you, because you will have a wildly successful social media effort, and you won't own it for yourself. You won't celebrate a win because it wasn't enough. The platform was built to make you feel that way. Okay, so this is where we're going to just throw a nod out to social media advertising. If you're looking for people outside your walls, you are looking at advertising. I'm going to sort of explain to you why that is the case later on. But when you are thinking of advertising, that flips. The who, which could be free if you do use organic marketing on Twitter. Right? It doesn't matter how many friends you have, you don't pay Twitter for that. The moment you start advertising, you pay for every person who sees that advertising. If you don't do the work to know who you want to see it, you are paying money you should not have been paying. Right? It is absolutely essential you know the who, because if all that matters to you is numbers, we're spending ministry dollars putting things in front of people that we are not equipped to minister to. Let the church be church. You minister in the place where you have been called, and allow others to minister in places where they've been called. And that is enough. Okay, talking about the how. Implementation. We know who, we know our why. Now we're going to jump in to how. How are you going to do this? Do these 3 things for a successful Facebook campaign. I wish you was my friend, Mr. Zuckerberg. Do these 3 things. Today's best practices in social media are yesterday's algorithm. Okay? I'm the guy who loves reading about algorithm changes because I'm a nerd. But I don't really use it that much. That's strange. So, because you're here today, you're kind of stuck with my oversimplified cycle of social media influence. Platform early engagement. This is where a platform starts. This was Facebook when I was in college, or Twitter a few years ago, or Pinterest a few years after that. In the early engagement phase, the platform is new. There's not a whole lot of users yet. The earliest users are rewarded, especially the active ones, because think about it. The platform needs content to be driven forward, right? It needs people to see things so that they keep coming back, so that it can work the formula. You can have the engagement, which earns the profits, right? So this is what happens. You're an early user on Facebook or Twitter. You make friends like crazy because Facebook is throwing your content to anybody who logs in. Look, we have content, right? And so the returns are massive. It's huge. You hit the gold mine, right? People who are early adopters in Facebook marketing have massive communities. Why? Because they started early. They had easy platform, or they had easy movement and massive distribution while the platform was early. But then the platform starts to mature. Okay? It starts to segment. That now there's enough people that they can start creating analogs in the digital space of what we would consider traditional offline communities, right? And it can start modeling that in the digital space. Now it starts showing you people in your social circle, or maybe one circle out of that. And now these are my favorite people who trick the algorithm to accomplish their goal, right? Because the platform's not mature enough to have closed all the bugs, so you can still beat it. There's something about beating Facebook that feels great. And it's this place where you're paying to play, right? You're paying an agency who's going to get you to the top of Google search results, or you're paying whatever it is. The platform is starting to mature. It's getting a little harder to get in front of people, and people are gaming the system. And then it saturates. This is Facebook. This is Twitter. This is Instagram. And by the way, Facebook is a behemoth. So Facebook Live, I would segment out. It's not saturated in the same way that Facebook Pages is. We're about to talk about that more, but regardless. Here, Facebook doesn't need your content. Facebook cares zero that Michael Gewecke doesn't post every day. That makes no difference to Facebook. Facebook has all the content they want. Their problem now is to get content in front of you that continues to drive engagement. With me? Mm-hmm. So Facebook no longer needs to reward you for organic outreach. They're ready for you to pay. And we're going to talk about that. I keep saying we're going to talk about it. It's coming here, I promise. This is, pro tip, as of 2 days ago, Facebook released that they are changing the algorithm of how they show page posts in news feeds, such that they will no longer prioritize pages that are subscribed to unless a user opts in manually, which I'm just going to tell you does not happen statistically, or that your content drives immediate discussion. There used to be a day if you said, hey, like it, love it, share it, that's going to get that piece jumped up to the top of people's news feeds. No more. Why? Facebook does not need your page data. Your page data is noise. Facebook's trying to tamp down on your congregation's page, honestly. They want the stuff that people makes them feel good, makes them feel connected. That's their friends. That's the people in their social circle. So, friends, let us not, as people seeking to serve churches and nonprofits and people who have important ministries to do, try to beat Facebook. Don't do it. Just don't try to beat Facebook. Like, if you're going to be on social media, do it authentically. Right? If you're going to ask a question, mean it. If your question wasn't worth asking, don't ask it. Right? Don't post because I need to keep posting to feed the machine. There's a sense in which that's true. If that's your job, that's your job. You need to do that, right? Because there are ways in which that implementation drives towards a purpose. But if that's not your job, and you have a specific purpose, stop trying to fit your ministry into Facebook's mold, because Facebook does not care and they will not reward you for it. Critic. Right. I want to just quick say 2 words. I want to segment. How are we doing? We're doing okay. I want to segment this. To people who this is part of your job description, this is your role and responsibility, and to those of you who are doing this on the side, whether you're a pastor or you're working for a denominational body, whatever. Okay. First, for pastors and people who do this on the side, I think we need to, as pastors, ask ourselves a gracious question. Is this my job? Whose role is this in a congregation? Okay? This is different for every context. But people who do this on the side, give yourself grace to say, I don't have the bandwidth to do this, but I do this. Or this person is responsible for this. We would all do very well to recognize our own limits in the digital space. You are not capable of being connected 24/7, regardless of how many times you told yourself that, or you've been given the impression that you shouldn't. So, give yourself some grace. What you do is enough. First Presbyterian Church Facebook page is not nearly as good as many of Smart Church Project's clients' Facebook pages. I'm just going to own that. The place where I work, we've had to accept limitation. Full stop. Communication directors. While keeping up with algorithm changes may be fun, or maybe it's not, maybe that's just me. I don't know. I'm not going to extrapolate that. Keeping up with the algorithm changes might be fun. Remember, beating Facebook is never the win. Engaging people is the win, right? So create content, create questions, create conversations that matter to people. That is what matters. And by the way, churches, that's what we're good at. So let's stick with it, right? Let's stick with the things that engage people at where they are and who they are. And that will produce real returns. Also, communication directors, people who this is in your job description, you need, underline, underscore, bold, whatever it is, you need to build systems and processes that make this work in your congregation. If you get hit by a bus tomorrow, somebody needs the keys to the account. Somebody needs that. And somebody needs to know that I'm the backstop when that thing happens. Right? I mean, I'm not even going to tell you the stories, right? You know the stories. Like, just, we're humans, and human stuff happens. We need systems and processes. I'm not, and by the way, you might hear me talking about policies right now. Policies are great. Policies are sometimes great. Policies do not equal, let me make another formula, they do not equal a change in human behavior. Right? Stuff is going to happen even though you have a policy. Who's the backstop? And who's prepared to deal with it? And maybe more importantly, who are you going to call? Right? Okay, that's it. I'm done. Sorry, moving on. What? Question mark. What? Evaluation. Okay, we start with the purpose. It lends us to our context, who, and then we work on implementation. And now we need to do this all-important task of evaluation. I cannot, this is great. The myth number 6, analytics are for tech geniuses. I love Apple because Apple names what they do. We have geniuses. By the way, you're not one of them. Right? They wear the badge, you don't. You make the appointment, right? Analytics are for geniuses. You need to be a genius to figure out the analytics. And there's some agencies who make some very good money doing this. So this is where analytics boil down, okay? We might be tempted to think the hardest part is making content. And it's a grind, I'm not gonna lie. But the hardest part, in my opinion, is not making content. It is knowing what to do with the after. It's evaluating what happened. Because remember, this is all about purpose. We have to return to, does this lend towards the goal? Because if not, it doesn't matter how good your content was, or how many people liked it, or how many people loved it. If your goal was butts and seats, and there's nobody else in that pew on Sunday, it did not accomplish its purpose. Okay? Okay. We can talk about Facebook tracking pixels. We can talk about Google Analytics. We can talk about the suites, both native to the platforms and outside the platforms. We can talk about the pluses and minuses. I'm going to have some links to that later on. But fundamentally, this is it. Are we brave enough to stop, to get above the fray, turn off the notifications, and to ask what resonated and what did not? What drove to our purpose and what did not? If you are in any kind of ministry context, whether you're in a congregation or you're at a higher level, you know the weariness of stopping and knowing that there's stuff piling up that I'm going to have to do later because I'm asking higher level questions. But you have to do it. Running a campaign is not enough. That's like paddling as hard as you can in a lake in upper Minnesota without knowing where you're going. Because if you keep paddling and you're going south and you should have been going north, it's going to be a long night. What times are best? What types of content is most engaging to your community? And then most importantly, what kinds of engagement are most effective at reaching your goals? And what platforms resonate? All of that can be found in asking these questions. I can't emphasize it enough. Every time I talk about this, I try to say this. Lots of churches and nonprofits feel like this is a second language to them. I want to help interpret this for you. We are people who speak theologically. And all that means is we have something to say about God's engagement in our lives, right? We have something to say about what God has done and how that matters to us. That is also translatable into a digital space, right? We are good at reading, at least we should be, or continuing to practice, reading, listening, speaking. That is what we should bring online. You should read, you should listen, you should speak. You should come in with open arms, open hands, open ears, open hearts, trying to hear, really hear, right? When a person comes and baits you, and your uncle says that thing that you disagree with significantly, and you as a representative of whatever organization want to tamp down on that, that wasn't human. We need to be ministers in an online space. That requires openness and humility and quiet and centeredness. We have that in our traditions. Let's apply it. I skipped, sorry. Okay, so let's summarize a little bit of this. Let's talk less about tools and more about practice. In my opinion, it's a very small opinion, I think we talk way too much about tools and not enough about practice. Okay? If you use Buffer or if you use Hootsuite or you don't know what I'm talking about, great. I'm happy for you. Tools, platforms do not drive the ministry of the church. There are contexts in which the church's ministry happens. There are communities who are doing all of their ministry work online. Awesome. First Presbyterian Church in Spirit Lake is not that. We have a different context. We have a different purpose. And if our online communities don't look different, we are doing something massively wrong, right? So there are more ways to package, to embody, to speak of, to be in conversation with this good news that we've been given than ever before. And church, let's remember what we're good at. Right? Let's remember that whether we're sitting with coffee at coffee hour or whether we're on Facebook Messenger, we are called to be present to one another, to reflect the love of Christ, to let our theological connectedness and reverence, the good news to us, to be truly embodied in our online presence. And if we do that, then we're at least striking to the heart of what we're called to be and who we're called to be. So, I intentionally chose this word, habits of intentionality. And I wanted to add to the summary the idea of contextualizing it. Contextualize your habit of intentionality. And this, I'm going to be as concrete as I possibly can be. When are you going to do it? That's my question for you. Pull up your Google Calendar or pull out your paper calendar and you put down, I'm going to sit down for an hour and I'm going to ask the questions. Right? All this takes is a Word document. The tool is not the hard part. The hard part is the practice. When are you going to do it? That's my question for you. When are you going to do it? And my guess is, especially here. Because if you don't have a system and process to do it, you're not going to do it. You're going to be like, hey, I got 14 likes on that one. That's awesome. Right? That's your evaluation. You need to do this. And who are you going to do it with? That's my next question. Right? Because anyone who works in a church or nonprofit can recognize we look at our belly buttons way more than we should. And we miss what we should be seeing. By the way, you can't try harder. You can't, oh, I'm going to just get better. I'll figure it out. I'll see it. No, you won't. You're blind. We're all blind. We need people, right? I mean, we need others to be looking in and to see. So whether that's a colleague, maybe they're a friend, or maybe it's another pastor, maybe it's another person in another denomination, maybe it's someone in the office next door to you, I don't know who it is. Who are you going to ask these questions with? Who are you going to go to and say, you know, we did this campaign. It was a 6-week deal. We were trying to raise money for a really great cause. And unfortunately, the implementation seemed to go really well. But when we evaluated, there was no money given. We didn't have a purpose, right? Who are you going to ask that question? That's absolutely unbelievably important. And finally, I cannot stress this one enough, guys. We in the church are always feeling behind, right? What was it yesterday that like the church is just now getting? We're just figuring out how to be the church in the 1980s media world, right? We always feel like we're just sucking wind, like we're behind the entire pack, right? I want to offer you an encouragement. I want you to walk away from here not feeling like, oh, there's no way I'm going to get good at this. Remember that your calling is to embody the gospel. And if you are doing that in a digital space at all, good job. Right? Right? I want to encourage you to get better. Have a habit of intentionality. Continue to improve. Iterate. But I want you to hear now and today, what you are doing is enough. You are a beloved child of God. Right? You don't need to be on your phone more to have more love. You don't need to be better at figuring out how to tweak your page algorithm, or now you need to go to your congregation and figure out how you're going to get them to manually opt in so they get your content, right? Pause and reflect on the grace that has been offered to you by the one who knows you by name and loves you. That is the same grace you should embody in an online space. And if you do, the gospel will be compelling regardless of the platform. That's my conviction. Church, just be good at what we're good at. Okay. Sorry. Woo, start preaching now. Brian's going to make fun of me when he watches this. Sorry.
It's great.
So here's that habit. The why. The who, the how, the what. Start with purpose, recognize your context, build the implementation, and evaluate it. If you live there, it will serve you well. Okay, I promised you tools and I did not deliver, so this is my hope to help. There is a page with links to all of the gobbledygook tools that anyone starting out needs. Stuff like scheduling and analytics and different tools to help you in different platforms. If you're a communication director, none of that is going to be new or engaging or scientific. This is super basic, simple stuff. If you want some tools and you came because it said minutes of social media and you thought, hey, it's going to give out tools, this is my attempt to not totally disappoint you. That's all I have. I would love questions. I would love feedback. And online, let us know. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, it says there are 4 notifications in chat and 1 in Q&A on the screen. So I don't know if that means that there are people that are trying to communicate on the webinar, on Zoom.
No, not yet. We don't have any yet.
They haven't raised their hand to ask a question, but they're probably chatting.
But I'm believing that I'm going to get a hand when we've got one. So, perfect.
So, first of all, thank you. Preach it. This is an analog story that isn't even about social media, really, but it just reinforces what you just said for me. So I just finished teaching an intensive January term class yesterday on youth ministry in the room behind us. And the tech, sort of the system at the podium is not working in that room. So it was sort of my invitation to, which I tend to sort of teach on the lower tech side anyway, because I think it's about being present. I think it's about modeling. But what's interesting is I ended up teaching a 5-day class on youth ministry that was probably one of the best classes I have ever taught in terms of both how I enjoyed it and from the sense of people responding. And we did 0 tech. Like, we talked a lot about our online presence. We talked a lot about how technologies are, what resources are available online. They're doing an assignment about curating resources and so on. But what was so interesting was students, both current and continuing ed, were so grateful for being in a conversation about ministry that started as a beloved child of God, started at that place, which is, what is our discerned gift in our context for ministry, that they went away talking about, I'm less afraid now to know how to be present online. Does that make sense? So it was sort of, I mean, if you think about youth ministry in the larger picture of the church, people immediately think bells and whistles and technology. And so it was just a 5-day little immersive experience in being together in community, discerning those 4 questions. In my case, for the sake of young people and walking with them in faith and discipleship. But what was so reassuring listening to you is it just sort of organically led us, not that we all went out wanting to tell the story in a deeper way, which we'll do, I think, more authentically in the platforms on which we live. But it was just that moment where you're saying this at a larger level for us as ministers and leaders in contexts that are naturally engaging social media, but we have to start praying and being together.
Yeah. Well, I want to add to that, not that I can ever add anything to No, I feel like I've been in some high-tech church contexts just throughout my own faith journey, and they're all behind. There are very few church contexts that are truly cutting edge. I just want to own that to you. I mean, like, the main line points to, like, the conservative evangelicals, and, like, they've got figured out. No, they've got last year's tech, too, right?
Or they have a few people with some big gadgets.
Yeah, right. And here's the thing. Reformed people, I'm Presbyterian, Reformed, and you may not know a whole ton about the Reformed tradition, but we're big on guilt in our camp. So I'm just going to own that to you. Our tradition enables us to key into Facebook's negativity really easily. Right? I mean, Facebook reminds me of my depravity all the time. Right? Either the depravity of my neighbor or the depravity of my wanting more likes. Right? And the reality is, I think we should remember that maintaining spiritual vitality is enough. Right? Because pastors burn out. And I'm not talking about online, I'm talking about in their congregations. Pastors burn out when they think they can be all things to all people. And that also applies to platforms. If you think you can keep up with algorithm changes, and you think that you can keep up with how to beat the system, and you think that's maybe even part of your job in the 21st century, which that's great. Some people are naturally gifted at that, and I want to encourage you to use those gifts. Right? But if you feel guilt that you can't do it, we're doing something wrong. Right? Let's start from a place of grace and gratitude, and recognize that if we live into that vitality, which is ours in Christ, that will be compelling. Yes.
So I want to talk just about purpose. So I use Facebook only professionally. I didn't use it before. I just used my husband's account to snoop on people from high school. But I didn't have my own account until it was part of my diocesan role. And I am fascinated by the lack, like all the work that I can do and all the connections, and yet the lack of engagement that comes with all of that work, because I'm also really invested in personal engagement. So I spend more time out in the field than I do in front of my computer. But we get this message that it is the way of engaging.
Right.
And the only success I really have is when I curate content directly related to a time and place that I was just present with people. And so my goal so an example would be, met so-and-so and so-and-so from this church and that church, and I'm and I'm connecting them all on Facebook, and we had this great conversation, and here's that resource I was thinking of. So it's for them, but it's for the professional audience. And so a couple of things happen. One, the content does get picked up because people who know me know them and think, oh, they're using that? Interesting, or they were asking that question. But it has to be always tied to something in real life, like real conversations with people. The Facebook and the technology is just an extension, just like all the social media tools we're using for this event, right? If we were just sharing out all of the resources from all these great minds without us being present and connecting to one another, it just would not have the same impact. So I really want to validate that purpose is important and that grace. And the other thing I want to say is sometimes I periodically test the system to see whether or not, like, I do something totally different. And so I never post about my family, but I posted about this dog adoption story in my family. I got so much response from the dog picture, right? It's like the cat punching the other cat, right, that we saw in the video yesterday. And yet that was not that did not fit the model of why I'm using a social media account, right? But that feeds into my reflection about what it's doing for the people who are connected to me. What do they actually want?
Right.
Actually, they just want to see my life. Well, actually, that's not why I have this account.
Right. Well, so let me,
right?
and I'll come right over to you, I promise. Let me share this just very, I'll be very candid. So in two contexts. One, I'm with people in this room who are using social media way better than me. And I'm just going to own that. And you say, Michael, how can you care about this and not be better at it? No. And the answer to that is, I just 2 days ago, I had a church member use social media to ask me to pray for him. You know, the last time I posted on that platform, maybe 6 months ago. If you think that you need to game the system for people to care and to know how to reach you, maybe you bought into the fundamental assumptions of the platform. Maybe you fit into that formula in a way that you shouldn't have. Second thing, I'm part of a company which needs to do sales. This is just being very candid. We need to do sales. We need people to know who we are, and we need them to come, and we need to be partners with people, right? The way to do that is content marketing. Write blog posts. You have social media to be posting. We are the worst content marketers in the entire web design agency world. I promise you. Like we are the last in that. We intentionally have chosen, this may change in the future, I don't know. But up to this point, we've chosen, we are not going to write content. We're going to spend that time talking with people. Yeah. Now, is that the best business decision? I don't know. Is it right for our purpose? Yes. I'm not trying to change your purpose. Some of you need to be writing content as either part of your job or as part of the engagement that you need to accomplish your purpose. Do it. But I want to be the guy. Let me be the guy who stops you and says, if you feel guilt over something that you aren't doing that wouldn't meet your purpose, just cut it out. Just cut it out. Just be gracious with yourself. It'll be better. Yes?
I was just listening to what you were talking about and in the work that I do in communications and marketing. Been doing for years around brand development. You know, you're promoting a brand, right? Or you're creating an experience. That overlay around your who, what, when, where, and why is it important? That you're really talking about is relevancy and value. I keep asking myself, is it relevant? Is it valuable? Because when I look at how healthy organizations evolve, especially in the communication space, engagement space, we've got a promise that we're making, right? That's fundamental, and some wants and needs of someone else, and that wants to be connected to us, or may not know if they need to be, but that overlap, you know, that where they connect is that relevancy and that value. And that's, I keep asking myself as people come to me all the time and say, we got to do this, we got to do that. Well, is it relevant to who we're trying to engage with, and is it valuable, and is it worth whatever it's going to take for us?
Can I give a really concrete example of that?
Yeah.
Okay. So as part of my youth group, I have been on a long journey of trying to figure out how to be in students' lives outside of our building. Okay? And I turned immediately to social media, to Facebook and to Twitter and like wherever the kids are, that's where I'm moving, right? And I fought and fought and fought and fought to get my stuff on the timeline. Did you see it? No, I didn't see it. Did you see it? No, I didn't see it. Well, engage it more. Push the button. Come on, get up higher in your feet. And then I stopped. I evaluated. I thought, I know that the kids care because they asked me, but they're not getting it. How do we solve it? I went set up an SMS messaging system, and right now today, in a high school youth group of about 25 or 30 active kids in high school, I have 33 who receive daily text messages from me with a scripture reading and with prayer and with education materials that connect to the weekly lesson. And that is a notification on their phone direct that they engage. By the way, I have analytics to track what they do. It's not Snapchat.
Right. Right.
Right? That's where I should be. That is where their user segment is. SMS is an old technology, right? But the reality is, if we are just willing to ask, is this something that has value in what matters to them and in the value that we as the people of faith have to give, right? That proclamation, that pointing. Then we just need to find the place where the medium and the people meet, and that's enough. Far too often, I'll stop sort of hammering at this, but far too often we come into conversations with churches and nonprofits, and they want to engage the conversation about communication like they do their email servers or their projectors, right? Like, could you just make us a list? That'd be really great. Like a list of, like, you push this button and it turns on, you say, like, whatever, and then you hit input 3 times, and right? That's what they want. And that's a little bit akin to, like, you coming and asking me, Michael, in coffee hour, how should I greet people? Should it be by name? Should it be by, right? I don't know how you greet people. Do you greet them with a hug? Don't do that awkwardly. Do you, greet them with a piece of Christ? Like, I don't know how you do you, right? But to think that as churches, because we feel awkward and left-footed in a technological space, that we need to fake it till we make it. It is just a horrible aberration of what we've been called to be, right? And that's you, right? And so it just, I want you to see and hear that there is a person who's doing this horribly in Spirit Lake, Iowa, who cares a lot about this, who posts to Facebook 4 times a year. I'm probably doing it horribly wrong, but people are still hearing the good news. And I hope they can see it in me. And if that happens at all, then we're doing what we've been called to do as church. So I promised I would disappoint you all. I know I've kept that promise. But I also hope that you leave here encouraged, honestly. I do hope that you leave here inspired. This is the danger of me giving this presentation, is that you're all going to go out and they're going to ask, how was the social media miss class? You're going to say, he ranted up social media the whole time. I never get asked to eFormation again. So the danger is that, but I hope instead you walk out of here hearing that these tools are yours. They are yours. Live into them faithfully, right? And I think the way that I can encourage you to do that is hold on to the habit. Because if you hold on to the habit, you will naturally throw away the stuff that isn't you. It isn't faithful in your context. And you'll naturally appropriate the things that are. And as you do that in the seasons of life and ministry and in the places of your organization, I believe that it will both bring life to you and life to the communities where you've been called and where you serve. And that is, I think, the best that we can do.
Amen.
Do we have anything from our online crew? Nothing. All right. I'll be here. Friends, thank you for being here today.